My classmate kept repeating everything that I say and made me look like I am the copycat. But her fake brilliance collapsed in front of the class. There was this girl, Haley, in my sociology class, who would literally repeat everything I said but louder, and 2 seconds later, I'd answer a question in class discussion and she'd immediately raise her hand and say the exact same thing with slightly different words like it was her original thought. "That's such a good point, Haley," the professor would say while I sat there in shock. She'd even copy my examples. When I mentioned my grandmother's immigration story to illustrate cultural adaptation, Haley suddenly had a grandmother with an identical immigration story. When I brought up my part-time job at a bookstore to discuss labor theory, Haley mysteriously also worked at a bookstore with the exact same experiences. She was smart about it, though. She'd sit behind me so I couldn't see her taking notes on everything I said. She'd wait just long enough that it didn't seem obvious. She'd add little phrases like, building on that thought, or to expand further before repeating my exact points. The professor loved her because she seemed so engaged and thoughtful. Our classmates thought Haley was brilliant. She was getting credit for every single idea that came out of my mouth. When I confronted her privately, she acted confused. "I don't know what you mean. Great minds think alike, I guess. Maybe you're just upset that someone else is also smart?" She started gaslighting me, telling people I was jealous of her academic success, that I was trying to claim her ideas as mine. The situation got worse during group projects. Haley would volunteer to present for our group, then present my research and analysis as her own work. When I'd object, she'd say, "We're a team. These are our collective ideas. Don't be so possessive." But when grades came back, she'd make sure the professor knew which parts were primarily her contribution, which were mysteriously all the parts I'd done. She befriended my study group and started showing up to our sessions. She'd sit silently while I explained concepts to others. Then the next day in class, she'd raise her hand and explain those exact concepts word for word. The professor started calling her his star student. "Haley really understands this material on a deeper level," he'd say. I was getting B's on participation while she got A's for participating with my own thoughts. I tried recording our conversations to prove she was copying me, but she was too careful. She'd never directly copy me when we were alone, only in class where recording wasn't allowed. She'd even pretend to disagree with me in study groups, then present my argument as her own later. Other students started coming to her for help instead of me because they thought she was the smart one. Then came time for our final presentations. 20% of our grade. We had to present original research on a social phenomenon of our choice. I'd been working on mine about social media's impact on rural communities for 2 months. I'd done fieldwork in my hometown, interviewed 30 people, created original frameworks. I made the mistake of practicing my presentation in the library where Haley overheard. She signed up to present right before me. The day of presentations, Haley stood up and delivered my entire presentation. My research, my interviews, my frameworks. She'd even recreated my slides with slightly different colors. She talked about visiting her hometown, which she described exactly like mine. Interviewing people with the same demographics as my subjects. Discovering the same patterns I'd found. The class was mesmerized. The professor called it groundbreaking. I sat there frozen. When my turn came, I stood up with my identical presentation. The professor stopped me after 2 minutes. "This is obviously